Krishna teaches yoga in the Bhagavad Gita. It is very necessary for us to understand what this word means in the Gita context. Today, the whole world has heard the word yoga. But most people understand by yoga something very, very ordinary, very often cheap, very often magical and misty. It is good for us to understand this profound word as understood by this extraordinary teacher in that extraordinary book, Krishna in the Gita. Yoga is, in the simplest language, practical spirituality. It is the derivation of the practical implications of the profound vision of human dignity and glory given by the Upanishads. If man is the Atman, immortal and divine, what follows in your life and in my life? This practical implication is brought out by the word yoga, and the Gita is therefore the greatest book of practical Vedanta. The philosophy of the Upanishads is known as Vedanta. The well-known word today. Literally it means the end of the Vedas, because the Upanishads, as we know, are the final portions of the vast and varied Vedic literature. But in a more profound sense, Vedanta also means the gist of the Vedas, the essence of the Vedas. This Vedanta became sponsor to a profound religion in India, which has a very unique name. In fact, it is a nameless name. It is called Sanatana Dharma, eternal religion, not based upon a person, not anything historically conditioned. It has no person behind it, because Sanatana Dharma is based on principles, based on the profound truths discovered by the sages of the Upanishads. That is why it is impersonal. In Sanskrit, the word impersonal is expressed by the word apaurushaya. Doesn't derive sanction from any authoritative person, however great he may be. They derive sanction by their truth value, from their truth content. And yet, persons do come in Sanatana Dharma as great exemplars of the truths proclaimed in the Upanishads. That is how, in the later period, you come across gigantic personalities, world-moving personalities like Sri Rama, Sri Krishna, and in the historical period, the great Buddha. Here is a combination of the impersonal and the personal. Sanatana Dharma is what you mean by Hinduism today. If you abstract all the narrow sociological ideas of Hinduism, take only the philosophical, spiritual content of this great religion, you have the best word to express it, namely Sanatana Dharma, eternal religion, universal religion, as relevant today as in ancient times when it was promulgated. The source book of this Sanatana Dharma is the Vedas, more particularly the last portions of the Vedas, namely the Upanishads. And the most practical exposition of this great philosophy, exposition in terms of man's practical life, is the Bhagavad Gita. The Upanishads are lofty. We look at them, we admire them, but we find difficult to approach them, like Mount Everest, saluting it from a distance. But the Gita brings down this profound philosophy to the level of every human being. The administrator, the professional, the simple housewife, the laborer, and the student. Wherever man is, in any work situation, the Gita brings this profound philosophy to the level of the most ordinary people. That is a great work. That's why the Gita has a unique place in the history of man's search for truth and fulfillment. All this quality of the Gita as practical spirituality is expressed by that word yoga. And this yoga is derived from the message of the Upanishads. That is why in every chapter of the Bhagavad Gita towards the end, you have a colophon which describes the nature of the teaching contained in the Gita. This is the colophon. Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishadsu Brahmavidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Bhakti Yogo Dhamma or Dhyana Yogo Dhamma, so and so Adhyaya, so and so chapter. The colophon says, thus, in this great Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which is a Brahmavidya, the great science of God, science of the infinite self, but not just the science like pure science, but applied science, Yoga Shastra. That's the meaning of the word Yoga Shastra. Science and applied science. Here is the application of that science in the life of man. Here is a simple worker. How does this science affect him? How can this science make his life fulfilled? That is why it's called Yoga Shastra. And the whole science was communicated through a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade. It contains many, many approaches to human fulfillment. That's why each chapter expounds one aspect of this great subject. There are 18 chapters, 700 verses. So all this put together makes for a fascinating study of this great subject in the Bhagavad Gita. The special emphasis in the Gita is here that it doesn't ask people to come up to the level of that philosophy, but the philosophy descends to the level of the average individual. What is an average individual? He lives a simple life, he works, he earns, he establishes relationships with the world outside, he has his ups and downs, happiness, misery, success, failure. Krishna and the Gita take up man at that level and gently educates him in this profound truth, slowly, step by step, until he or it installs that individual in his own dignity, in his own fulfillment. That is the meaning of the word yoga. It is nourishment for the human spirit. Just like milk nourishes us, so also the Gita nourishes the average individual who has to face his life, face his problems. This quality of the Gita is particularly evident in the context in which this dialogue took place, this communication of a profound practical philosophy took place, namely a battlefield, the Kurukshetra battlefield. Everyone has to fight his battle of life. But everyone has not to fight a real, terrible battle as Arjuna had to do. It was special about him. But the battle of Arjuna becomes universalized as the battle of life itself. And as Arjuna retreated from the battle, and Krishna asked him to face his responsibility, go back to the battle, so also the Gita summons humanity to face the problems of life, not to run away from them, to face the brute, as Vivekananda expressed it in a beautiful lecture in England. Face the brute. By closing the eyes to the problems, they only get shelved, but they don't get solved. This positivistic approach is the special quality of the Gita teaching. And through that particular approach, the Gita gives prominence to one particular aspect of human life which has been so neglected in much of religion, namely work. Man must work, and through work he must build up his destiny, build up his character, build up his personality, build up his social environment. This is the central theme of the Bhagavad Gita, so that a housewife a laborer, an administrator, a scientist, a teacher, everyone in society. The Gita doesn't ask him to wind up all this and come to religion. The Gita says religion will come to you wherever you are. This is possible because the truth that is expounded in the Upanishads, on which Krishna bases his philosophy, is not a faraway truth, but an ever-present truth, the eternal in the heart of man, the infinite in the heart of man, the Atman. This Atman is the birthright of every being. And so the Gita pronounces that profound dictum, spirituality is the birthright of every child in this world. Nature has given us the organic capacity to acquire the spirituality. It's not something given only to specialized people. It is universal. This universalizing of a profound message is the special contribution of Bhagavan Sri Krishna and of his great teaching, the Bhagavad Gita.